Imagine a popular storefront. Let's say it's a high-end sneaker drop.
Or a boutique coffee shop, yeah.
Exactly. You open the doors, ready to sell, but instantly 10,000 people just swarm the entrance.
But they're not buying anything.
Not a thing. They're not even looking at the merchandise. They're just standing there, shoulder to shoulder, completely jamming the aisles, blocking the door.
So the real customers, the people who actually want to get in, they physically can't.
They can't. The store is effectively closed, even though the lights are on and the staff is ready. Now, take that exact idea, that physical denial of service, and just move it online.
To the network layer.
And you have an intentional, malicious digital traffic jam designed to stop the world from turning.
It creates total paralysis. And in the digital space, where you have things like high-frequency trading or, real-time health monitoring, that paralysis is measured in millions of dollars.
Or even critical safety risks per minute.
For sure.
Welcome back, everyone, to the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast. We are doing another deep dive today, and this one is, it's a heavy hitter. It is. We've been going through a stack of research and reports from the team at WeCyberYou, and we are focusing on a term that I think everyone knows, but very few people actually understand the mechanics of.
DDoS attacks.
DDoS attacks.
Yeah, it's one of those acronyms that gets thrown around in the news all the time. The site was DDoSed, but the engineering behind it and the strategy, it's so much more sophisticated than just internet go boom.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're not here to just say it's a lot of traffic. Our mission today, guided by that WeCyberYou source material, is to really pop the hood.
Get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, we want to look at the architecture of these attacks, the specific flavors they come in, because not all floods are created equal, and ultimately, the motivation. I mean, why spend all the resources to build a digital weapon just to stop a website from loading?
The why is fascinating, but you're right. The how is where the real nuance is. So to set a baseline, the WeCyberYou definition of a distributed denial of service attack is a sophisticated attempt to disrupt, degrade, or completely shut down access to a network or service.
By overwhelming it.
By overwhelming it with traffic.
But there's a key distinction right at the start. You have DOS and DDoS. That extra D seems to be doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Oh, it changes the entire threat landscape. A standard DOS denial of service that typically originates from a single source. One bad actor, one IP address, just hammering a server.
Which, for a modern firewall, is, that's barely a warm-up, right?
Yeah.
You see the IP, you blacklist it, and the problem is solved in milliseconds, like kicking that one unruly guy out of the store.
Precisely. But the distributed denial of service, that's where the attacker scales up. The attack isn't coming from one house.
It's come from 10,000 houses.
Or 100,000 from every continent, all at the same time. You can't just block the IP because there isn't one IP. You're trying to filter malicious drops of water out of a fire hose.
And this is where the infrastructure part comes in. If I'm a hacker, I can't generate that kind of global traffic from my laptop. I need scale. I need an army.
You need a botnet.
So let's double click on this, because botnet is another term that gets misused a lot. Based on the source material, we aren't just talking about a bunch of hackers in a room together.
No. This is all about automation.
Okay.
A botnet is a network of compromised devices, and devices is really the operative word here. Traditionally, we thought of this as, compromised desktop computers.
Right.
But the WeCyberYou research highlights how the attack surface has shifted massively toward the Internet of Things, IoT.
This is that unmanaged attack surface we talk about. So it's not just computers anymore. It's what, routers?
IP cameras.
Routers, IP cameras, DVRs, smart thermostats.
Smart fridges. Even smart fridges. And the reason these are such prime targets isn't because they're powerful individually. They're not. It's because their security is, it's non-existent.
They're running these stripped-down operating systems, often with hard-coded passwords that nobody ever changes.
Exactly. You buy a generic IP camera, you plug it in, and it defaults to admin. You never think to change it. So a bot herder writes a script that just scans the entire internet for that specific device, logs in it with the default password, and drops a tiny piece of malware.
And suddenly that camera is a zombie.
A zombie. It still works for the owner, it's still recording the driveway, but in the background, it's secretly listening to a command and control server, a C2 server.
The puppet master.
That's the one. The owner of the botnet can sit back and type one single command, attack target X, and instantly hundreds of thousands of these little devices wake up and send whatever data they can at that target.
It's the sheer volume of the swarm. One smart bulb sending a packet is nothing. 1 million of them is a tsunami.
And that brings us to the actual impact. It's all about resource exhaustion. The WeCyberYou notes list, bandwidth, processing power, and memory. You are literally filling the pipe so the legitimate water the real users can't get through.
But, and this is where the research gets really interesting, it's not just about raw volume. The sources break down these attacks into 3 distinct flavors. It's not always just a brute force shove. Sometimes it's more like a surgical knife.
Right. Not all floods look the same. The 3 main categories are volume-based attacks, protocol attacks, and application layer attacks.
Okay, so let's start with the brute force.
Yeah.
Volume-based attacks. This sounds like the classic plug-the-pipe strategy.
It is. This is measured in bits per second. The goal is simple. Consume all the available bandwidth. If your internet connection is a highway with 4 lanes, a volume attack tries to put 5,000 semi-trucks on it all at once.
The source material mentions UDP floods, and specifically DNS amplification. I want to dig into that amplification part because the math there sounds terrifying.
It is. It's leverage, pure and simple. In a DNS amplification attack, the attacker sends a Tony request to an open DNS server, which is basically a directory for the internet. They ask for a large record, but they spoof the return address.
So they write return to sender, but they put the victim's address as the sender.
Correct, but here's the amplification part. The request they send is tiny, maybe 60 bytes, but the response that the DNS server sends back to the victim can be over 3,000 bytes.
Wait, that's a 50-to-1 ratio?
Roughly, yes. So for every 1 megabyte of bandwidth the attacker uses, the victim gets hit with 50 megabytes of garbage.
Wow.
You're spending pennies to cause thousands of dollars in operational damage.
That's volume. Okay, now the second flavor is protocol attacks. This feels more like exploiting the rules of the road rather than just causing a traffic jam.
That's a great way to put it. This targets the network layer 3 and layer 4. It's not about filling the pipe, it's about breaking the actual networking equipment. The firewalls, the load balancers.
And the classic example given is the SYN flood. This targets the TCP handshake, right?
It does. So for a connection to happen online, there's a 3-way handshake. I send you a SYN packet, you send a SYN ACK back, and I send an ACK to confirm. Connection established.
A polite conversation. Hello, good to see you.
Exactly. A SYN flood is me walking up to you, extending my hand for a handshake, you extend yours, and I just walk away.
Leaving you hanging.
Leaving you standing there, hand extended, waiting for me to finish the handshake. And that consumes memory on the server. It has to keep that hand extended state open.
And if you do that 1,000,000 times a second.
The server's state table fills up, its memory is exhausted, and it just stops accepting new connections. The pipe isn't full, but the server is completely catatonic.
It crashes the gear.
Okay.
So the third flavor. This is the one that seems to keep security engineers up at night. Application layer attacks.
Layer 7 attacks. These are the most insidious because they mimic legitimate user behavior.
So instead of targeting the network gear, they're going after the specific web application, the website code itself.
Exactly. A common method is an HTTP GET flood. To a firewall, it looks like a user is just requesting a web page. It's a valid request. It's formatted perfectly.
It doesn't look like a zombie. It looks like a real customer.
Right. But the botnet is requesting the most resource-intensive part of your site. Maybe a complex search query that forces your database to do a ton of work over and over and over again.
So how do you even distinguish between that and, say, a flash sale where millions of real users are all hitting refresh at once?
And that is the million-dollar question. It is incredibly difficult to detect because the traffic signature looks clean. You aren't seeing malformed packets or anything weird. You're just seeing a really high load. It requires behavioral analysis to catch, not just simple signature matching.
So we have the mechanism, botnets using volume, protocol, or application attacks, but we have to pivot to the strategic side. Why? I mean, if I'm a criminal, why would I risk my botnet just to knock a site offline? The WeCyberYou sources outline 4 big motivations.
And the first is the most straightforward. Financial gain. Extortion.
This is the DDoS for ransom model we hear about.
It's digital protection money. A group will fit a company with a brief 15-minute attack, just enough to prove they can do it. Then the email arrives. That was a demonstration. Pay us 10 Bitcoin or we shut you down for Black Friday.
And for a big e-commerce site, the math is brutal. If downtime costs you $100,000 an hour, paying a $50,000 ransom suddenly seems like a logical business decision.
Which is exactly why it works. It's low effort for them, high pressure for the victim.
Then you have ideology, hacktivism. This is less about profit and more about digital protest.
Yeah, we see this all the time during geopolitical conflicts or social unrest. Groups use DDoS as a way to silence opposition or disrupt government communications. It's a digital sit-in.
But the third one listed here, business competition, that's the one that feels the dirtiest. Just pure corporate sabotage.
It happens more than people realize, especially in unregulated markets or highly competitive sectors like online gaming. If you can knock your competitor offline during their big product launch, you win that market share.
Customers don't know it's an attack. They just think, this app sucks, I'm downloading the other one.
You've weaponized user frustration. But the fourth motivation outlined by WeCyberYou is the one I find most strategically dangerous.
The smokescreen.
The smokescreen. This turns the entire DDoS attack into a magician's trick. Look at my left hand.
So you don't see what my right hand is doing.
Imagine you're in a security operations center. Suddenly, every alarm goes red. The firewall is melting down. The website is offline. The execs are screaming for updates. Your entire security team is all hands on deck trying to mitigate this DDoS.
It's panic mode, total chaos.
And in the middle of that chaos, while everyone is staring at the traffic graphs, a single quiet thread of data leaves the network from a secure database.
Data exfiltration.
Exactly. The DDoS was never the real goal. It was just the distraction. The attackers used all that noise to cover the tracks of a breach, stealing credit cards or intellectual property, while the defenders were too busy fighting the fire to notice the burglary.
That is terrifyingly smart. You're not hacking the computers, you're hacking the human response team.
It forces them to split their resources. You can't ignore the DDoS, but you also can't ignore everything else. It puts defenders in an impossible bind.
So, given these stakes, and the source material highlights the fallout, huge financial losses, reputational damage, even operational disruption to critical sectors like hospitals and power grids, we have to talk about the shield. How does an organization actually defend against something like this?
You can't fight a distributed attack with a centralized defense. You can't just buy a bigger router box and hope for the best. The industry standard, as WeCyberYou points out, is using DDoS mitigation services and content delivery networks, or CDNs.
Okay, so using the distributed nature of the internet against the attackers.
That's it. A CDN basically acts as a global sponge. Instead of all that malicious traffic hitting your one data center in New York, it gets absorbed by hundreds of smaller servers all around the world. The CDN takes the hit, it scrubs the traffic, and only lets the clean, legitimate requests through to you.
That concept of scrubbing is key. The source mentions traffic filtering and rate limiting. But that has to be a delicate balance, isn't it?
It is extremely tricky to tune. Rate limiting is basically saying if one user makes more than 100 requests a minute, block them.
But what if that user is a legitimate API that needs to make 100 requests a minute to function?
Exactly. That's a false positive. If you tune your shields too tight, you start blocking your own customers. You're effectively doing the attacker's job for them by denying service to real users.
So security teams have to constantly be adjusting things to tell the difference between a bot and just a power user.
And WeCyberYou emphasizes that this tuning can't happen during the attack.
No, it's too late then.
Way too late. That's why having incident response and continuity plans is so critical. You need to know your baseline traffic. You need to know what normal looks like so you can spot the anomaly immediately. If you're trying to figure out your defense strategy while the servers are on fire, you've already lost.
It's about resilience, not just resistance. You have to just assume the attack is coming.
And the barrier to entry for launching these attacks has never been lower. You can rent a botnet on the dark web for a few $100s. The defense has to be right every single time. The attacker only has to get it right once.
That brings us to a synthesis then of what we've covered. If we look at the big picture, DDoS attacks they're essentially the weaponization of connectivity itself.
That is the core takeaway. The internet was designed to be open to share information, to connect devices. DDoS attacks exploit that fundamental architecture. They turn the strength of the network, its interconnectedness, into its greatest vulnerability.
And I want to leave our listeners with a thought based on our discussion of IoT devices. We're currently rolling out 5G everywhere. We are putting smart chips in everything from cars to pacemakers.
We are adding billions of new unsecured devices to the network every single year.
So if we don't fix the security standards on these dumb smart devices, are we essentially just manufacturing ammunition for the next generation of botnets?
We absolutely are. As our bandwidth increases and our device count explodes, the potential scale of a DDoS attack grows exponentially. We probably haven't even seen the big one yet.
Wow.
If we continue to prioritize convenience over security in the IoT space, the next digital traffic jam won't just close a store. It could disconnect a nation.
A very sobering thought to end on, but one we all need to be aware of. We have to secure the perimeter, even if that perimeter is just a smart light bulb.
Especially if it's a smart light bulb.
Huge thanks to WeCyberYou for providing the in-depth research and source material that made this deep dive possible. It's clear that understanding these mechanics is the absolute first step in defense.
Absolutely. Knowledge is the only way you can counter this kind of asymmetry.
So if you want to stay ahead of these threats and understand the digital landscape better, make sure you follow this channel. We are breaking down complex topics like this every week.
And for more educational cybersecurity content just like this, please visit WeCyberYou.com. They have incredible resources there to help you dive even deeper.
Thanks for listening to the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast. Keep your devices updated, change those default passwords, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Stay safe, everyone.